is Christy.
And I'm Alex.
And this is
A Paranormal Girls into Normal Things.
Welcome back.
Here's our theme song. Yeah! Paranormal Girls into Normal Things. A Paranormal Girls into Normal Things. Yeah!
All right. I am so excited about today's episode.
Me too.
This is a very special episode to me because this is the case of the silent twins. This is a little bit personal to me because I am an identical twin. This is very spooky. There are many theories as to what the heck this was, and we're gonna get into it.
Hell yeah.
So, the girls, the twins, were named June Allison and Jennifer Lorraine Gibbons, and they were daughters of Caribbean immigrants, Aubrey and Gloria Gibbons, who moved from Barbados to the UK in the early 1960s. Their father joined the Royal Air Force, and their mother was a housewife. They gave birth to their first two children, Greta and David, in 1957 and in 59, respectively. In 1960, Aubrey was deployed to Aden, Yemen, and the family moved there for a brief period of time, and it was there that June and Jennifer were born at 8:10 a.m. and 8:20 a.m. respectively on April 11th, 1963.
So June's a little bit older.
June was born first, yeah.
Which one of you was born first? You or Julie? You don't know?
Okay, so then the family moved back to the UK, first to England and then to Haverfordwest, Wales, where the girls ended up growing up. The girls were inseparable from the jump. They were best friends. They did everything together. But school proved to be difficult for the twins because they, for one, were the only black children in their class. So racism ran rampant, especially because it was the 60s, 70s, and everyone was horrible and white. So they bullied them really, really bad to the point where the principal's solution was to let them go an hour early.
Like, to save them an hour of bullying?
I guess maybe so that they didn't all get let out at the same time. Maybe it all happened, right after school. So, look, I don't know. Not a great solution.
That sounds like he just didn't want to deal with it.
Right, yeah. It's not a good solution, but that's what they did.
I hate that.
The teachers started to notice that the twins became more and more withdrawn, and they just pretty much only interacted with each other. And then it got to a point where they eventually stopped speaking altogether, hence the name the Silent Twins.
Shit.
And they refused to read or write for a few years too. So the girls developed a condition known as cryptophagia, which is a really rare and really weird phenomenon where twins develop their own language. And how does that happen? It's not like they're like, okay, this means this and this means that. It just comes out of them. They just develop their own language.
So they were speaking to each other this other language?
Yeah, they developed their own language that only the two of them could understand.
This happened after they just so they were not talking for a really long time, and then they were just kidding. Now we're speaking.
Yeah.
June and Jen.
Yeah. So this is actually a form of idioglossia, which is a phenomenon of a small group of people developing their own language, which happens, I guess. The girls only interacted with each other, were completely silent, except for their weird little twin language. And when someone would try to talk to them, they would just completely ignore them. And their teachers at the school at the time sort of felt, and this is true of any kid, I think, especially back in the day when they would have some sort of learning or mental disability or something, teachers wouldn't fully understand it and would sort of resent it and think the students were being defiant on purpose. That's sort of what happened here. The teachers felt like the girls were not talking on purpose because they were
being defiant.
Yeah, being defiant.
Damn.
Which
does not actually help the situation in any way whatsoever, because you should not be an educator, in my opinion, if you're incapable of giving kids the benefit of the doubt. If your first thought is, well, they're just trying to fuck with me, You're going to hinder a lot of growth on both ends.
And if you don't know how to deal with neurodiversity, even as a kid with ADHD, I had so many teachers who just regarded me as though I didn't care. And that wasn't true. But
these teachers were also probably white and didn't really give a fuck about the black kids in their class.
I mean,
honestly.
They were really just like, all right, leave early. Like,
yeah.
And to prove this, like, the girls kept diaries, and they developed a ritual where they would basically get on their knees and pray for a way to communicate.
Oh.
So this is a quote from June. We'd open the Bible and start chanting from it and pray like mad. We'd pray to him to not let us hurt our family by ignoring them, to give us strength to talk to our mother, our father. We couldn't do it. Hard it was. Too hard. So what is going on?
They wanted to talk. Fuck.
Right. In 1976, a medic named Dr. John Reese was administering vaccinations at their school, and he noticed when the girls walked in, they were totally expressionless, he said. You spoke to them and they didn't react. I'd never seen anything like it. And he said they walked in and their hands were like glued to their sides and their heads were down and they were walking like directly next to each other, just like expressionless, silent.
I'm sorry, like girls. That at all.
That's they were like, struggling, but that's creepy.
No, that's for real, like stuff of nightmares. It's like if you like go to a hotel, like that's your nightmare, that you're gonna turn the corner and there's gonna be like two creepy twins, like dead silent and like Victorian garb. Yeah. That's
some shining shit. So he was a medic and he referred them to a psychiatrist, I guess. And they were finally diagnosed with selective mutism, which is a condition where something in your brain just tells you, I can't talk to select people, I guess, but they could talk to each other. Look, I'm not a doctor.
That still doesn't feel like a good diagnosis at all.
It wasn't accurate. Later on, they ended up being put in a mental facility, spoiler, and that diagnosis ended up getting thrown out.
Sure.
So they saw a lot of therapists, but they were unsuccessful in getting the girls to communicate with anyone but each other. And the girls were eventually sent to a special education school called the Eastgate Center for Special Education. The teachers there understood that the girls weren't stupid, they just had trouble communicating. And they realized the girls weren't actually speaking their own language. It wasn't cryptophagia. They were just speaking really, really fast English. Come on.
Oh no.
No one took the time.
That literally means no one cared.
Yeah.
Because how do you not figure that out?
Yeah, I don't know.
The parents thought they had cryptophagia too. They were like,
yeah, the parents couldn't understand what they were saying.
The fuck? I watch children for a living, and I've worked with children that have a lot of trouble forming words. Generally, that's just something that happens when you're a little kid. When you see that sort of happening, like speech therapy is usually the first thing you jump to. But also as a parent, like all of these parents that I've ever seen know exactly what the fuck their kids are saying. Because they took the time. Because they care.
Yeah.
That just blows my mind. That blows my mind.
At this school, they were observed eating and walking completely in sync with each other. Like lifting the fork at the same time.
No.
And if someone would look at them as they were doing this and they noticed you looking at them, they would stare at you.
No.
Until you looked away.
No.
And
no.
then they would go back to
No. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Look away.
Come on, girls.
You're trying to be creepy.
Come on, girls. So they actually had a younger sister named Rose, and they shared a room with her. And they actually would talk to Rose, and they loved Rose. And they would write plays and act them out with dolls for her. And they would sometimes record these plays and give them to her as gifts. They really liked Rose. They called her Rosie. But when Rosie turned 11, she moved out of their room and into her own room, and then they stopped talking to Rosie too.
Poor Rosie.
I know. So what the hell? I'm sorry, that's... What is it? So the girls wrote in their diaries. They kept diaries pretty consistently through their childhood. And they wrote that they felt that they had no choice but to act this way, and they longed for a normal life where they could eat and talk and just live separately.
They didn't want to be together?
No, I mean, they didn't want to be tethered together for their entire lives.
And they felt tethered.
Yeah, I mean, they completely were.
Yeah.
Like, they couldn't function. Even as a twin, growing up with someone your entire life who's like associated with you. Like, there's a certain level of identity that's tied into that. It is an intense thing being a twin, to be associated with someone for your entire childhood. It's a weird thing. So eventually they were sent to 2 separate boarding schools to see what that would do.
Danger.
They stopped eating, they stopped sleeping, they stopped talking, and eventually they became completely catatonic. Like, could not function.
I don't like that.
I'm stressed!
That is some, like, mega codependency.
It's involuntary.
Yeah, they literally don't want it.
They were like, all right, this isn't working. So they sent the girls home, back to not talking to anyone but each other. They even took a course on how to communicate, and it didn't work. Oh boy. So things started to change around 1981 when they were in their late teens.
And they were out of the boarding school?
They sent them home because that wasn't working. They were catatonic.
Gotcha.
So around 1981, they met some brothers who were visiting for the summer from America, and they became completely infatuated with them. Completely infatuated is kind of a polite way of saying it. They were obsessed. And at one point, they broke into the boys' house when they weren't home, because that's romantic.
Left turn.
So they started seeing the boys regularly. So I guess they were talking, or else...
They're just, like, silently hanging out with these boys, and the boys are just like, honestly, you know what? I don't put that past straight men. I don't. They were just, like, dancing at them.
They're like,
come on over, mama.
Okay. This is just how European girls do it.
I honest to God do not put that past American straight men. That these 2 girls were just, like, dead silent, and they were like, hell yeah, let's hang out.
So the twins started seeing the boys regularly and started partying a lot, doing a lot of drugs, drinking a lot.
Okay.
And these poor girls need so much therapy. They lost their virginity to the same brother within the same week. Because that's something you do. During this time, the girls were arguing a lot. They became super close because they were spending all their time... I mean, they always did, but
they banged the same boy now.
Right. But at the same time, they were constantly fighting. And according to some diary entries, these fights got physical. At the end of the summer, when the boys left, the girls were super upset. And that October, the girls decided they wanted to do something that would cause some damage. And they burnt down a big store in their town. And they were caught because Jennifer wrote all about it in her diary. And the police found it and were like, all right, you did it.
Okay, I generally don't understand the appeal of arson.
Yeah, what is arson about? People just get, like, fixated on fire.
Yeah, and I guess I get that. Fire's cool.
Yeah.
But I cannot bring myself to understand the draw of wanting to burn down a building with your weird twinny.
Yeah, what are you guys doing? I mean, okay. They have been trying to communicate for their entire lives. They are tied to this person, just begging, praying to God to be able to make contact with somebody else. Finally, they make a connection with somebody and then they leave. They're like screaming into the void. They like set something on fire, just like, somebody pay attention to me. So the girls were arrested and in jail, they were put in the same cell at first, but they broke into violent fights with each other. And then they would be separated, but then when they were separated, they became completely catatonic. So then they would be put back together, but then they would start fighting. So then they would get separated. And it was like a fun little cycle for them. And at this point, they completely hated each other. Oh. And they said that they, at this point, wanted the other one dead, which is intense.
They were both saying that about each other?
Yeah. They were charged with petty theft, arson, and vandalism. At this point, enter journalist Marjorie Wallace, whose book, The Silent Twins, her interviews with the girls provide us with a lot of the info we have on this case today. So it was decided by the judge that the girls should be sent to the Broadmoor Hospital, which is a high-security mental facility. And high-security mental facilities are for, like, murderers and rapists and crazy, crazy people. Oh. And these girls just, like, set some fires, which not good.
But they, like, just did not know what was wrong with them, and so they just threw them in this massive facility where they were being put in probably some danger.
Definitely.
And in probably poor conditions also on top of this. Like, fuck.
So they were sentenced to indefinite detention. You can't do that!
No.
You can't just be like, when we feel like it, we'll let you out.
That's subjective. How is that even allowed?
And by the way, they're 19 at this point. Yeah, they're teenagers. So the girls ended up staying in the hospital for 12 years, having been diagnosed with psychopathic personality disorder, a ruling which has since been disputed by their school psychologists, I guess, and Marjorie Wallace. So they were kept separate. They were kept in separate wards, and they were only allowed to communicate with each other and their family via letters. And they initially thought Broadmoor would be paradise, they said, which is a bummer. But it, of course, was far from that. Jennifer wrote in these letters that she knew she would die sooner than her sister. These girls really struggled with living separately. They started hallucinating and were diagnosed with schizophrenia, which we later found out they didn't actually have. I mean, psychologists tried to plant so many different diagnoses on them, and
you can really fuck someone up by misdiagnosing them. Especially in these mental health facilities, like, you can really, really do intense psychological damage on a person by misdiagnosing them. And the amount of times these girls have been misdiagnosed, that I'm sure made things infinitely worse.
They were given constant antipsychotics and tranks, but in a way, whatever the facility was doing actually maybe kind of helped them, because at this time they developed the ability to speak. Finally. So Marjorie Wallace visited them often, and she stated in her book, in a sad way, Broadmoor helped them somewhat. It was highly structured. They go to classes, earn privileges, attend socials with their axe murderer boyfriends. They spend hours with each other each day. They joined the hospital choir. Also, how would these girls have been treated? It's worth saying if they were white. Let's ponder that for a second. Probably way better. In March of 1993, after 12 years, the girls were not making enough progress to be released, but they were finally permitted to move to a medium security facility. And this was right before their 30th birthday. This was after 12 years. This was right before they were about to be moved to the medium security facility. Marjorie Wallace visited them. At first, June and Jennifer greeted her cheerfully. It was normal, but the conversation took a turn when Jennifer suddenly goes, Marjorie, I'm gonna have to die. And Marjorie was frightened and confused. The girls, both of them, insisted, saying, we've decided, we made a pact, Jennifer has to die.
They made a...
As they were being moved to this new facility, Jennifer started saying that she didn't feel well, and she was transferred to the Caswell Clinic in Bridgend, Wales. And when they arrived, Jennifer could not be woken up. And she quickly died of acute myocarditis, which is a sudden inflammation of the heart. So she died, and June was now able to go on and live her life. I know that she's since been released, and she's living a relatively normal life. You can see interviews of her talking about it, and she says that she feels a sense of freedom without Jennifer. Although she misses her sister, she now feels a sense of normality that she's never felt.
I have some concerns
Okay.
about her death.
So do June and Marjorie. They insisted on further investigation, and it was kind of ruled natural causes. They still feel like there's more to the story, and June... But, like, June, did you kill her? Like,
well, okay, so that's my concern, but also, like, what if... Because they made this pact.
Right.
They both verbalized the fact that Jennifer was going to die. I feel like there should be an investigation just based on that fact.
I think there was, and it was ruled nothing.
I mean, like, I don't know what the specifics of acute myocarditis are, but if that's something that could be, like, put on by any amount of poison or exacerbated in some way, like forced in some way, if it was planned.
To me, it seemed like more of a premonition and an understanding that the two of them were not going to be able to exist at the same time.
The word pact is sort of what I'm
clinging
to here.
Pact does sound like an agreement.
Yeah.
So there was no evidence of drugs or poison, and that's kind of all they have. But June says that Jennifer was acting strangely for about a day before their release. Her speech had been slurring, and she said that she felt like she was dying. But after she died, June said, I'm free at last, liberated, and at last Jennifer has given up her life for me. To me, I don't think June killed her. How would she have done it in a not detectable way?
I don't know, but like, fuck, like, these girls have been sort of flying under the radar for a very long time. I feel like there's lots of ways they could have figured out to discreetly kill Jennifer together. I'm not saying that June, like, single-handedly did this. They made an agreement.
So there are a lot of theories about what the heck was going on. A lot of people just say it was just a codependency. They psyched themselves into not being able to talk to anybody else. It was essentially just a psychological thing. Other people say if you are someone who believes in souls potentially living multiple lives and being here in their specific life to learn something specific, to me, it kind of feels like they were one soul, accidentally or not. I don't know what accidentally would mean. Maybe this was to teach them something. And of course, I don't know how it works, but it seems like one soul being split into two. They could not function without each other because they were of the same eternal entity.
My thought is, along with your belief in reincarnation, going on that track, that maybe these were two souls that were highly combative in past lives, that did not get along. Maybe one killed the other. Yeah. Or they were like mortal enemies. Mm-hmm. And now they've been planted in this situation.
Or just some karmic debt that they owed to each other.
Yeah, well they're now just being planted in this situation where they are basically tethered to each other. Mm-hmm. And it could be some form of punishment. Yeah. They did something not right
they're atoning
for past life, and now their payment is that this person that you hated is now in the situation where you're being forced to love them and be related to them. But that feels like a lesson in their situation. Yeah. One of them was being forced to sacrifice themselves.
Yeah.
They were being taught something. The other one was being shown a world in which they could not live without somebody else.
Yeah. And the universe was like, all right, you've made your decision. It's Jennifer. Time for Jennifer to go. Mm-hmm. Like, that, in a weird way, makes a ton of sense to me. I'm glad that June feels like she has found some peace. I hope Jennifer has found some peace. But now, I mean, hey, June, she can talk. She
can talk, she can walk.
Her own life. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think?
Let us know in the comments.
Let us know in the comments. Before we go, today's episode was sponsored by Why Not Designs. Get your merch today!
Do you have your custom wine glass from Why Not Designs?
Why not? Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next time. Goodbye.